And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to the show that we hoped we wouldn't get to this soon. This is Hoosier Morning After the NCAA Tournament. Last night, your Indiana Hoosiers exited the tournament in a disappointing loss to Miami, 85-69. Didn't look good from the drop. This game got out to a big one. Just starting to carve up Indiana's defense, taking a double-digit lead. But then the team did show some fight. They did show some adjustment at some point, bringing it to within 5 at half, at least restoring some hope for Indiana, thinking that we can still fight and get back into this. Coming out of half, things were looking pretty good. IU continued to lock down on defense, scored some quick, easy 5 points, and tied up the game. Took the lead, and then things kind of went back and forth for a little bit in that second half. And then we just kind of fell back on those bad habits that rear their ugly heads. And taking bad shots, taking ill-advised shots, allowing them to get the rebounds, way too many rebounds, poor rebounding game by Indiana, leading to 26 second chance points for Iowa. We have seen so many different versions of this team up and down throughout the year, and it's been so exciting when things are hitting and when things are going right, like the Kent State game before, but then gets so scary and so frustrating and aggravating when they don't, when they go the other way, when the effort is lacking. And sadly, we hoped that we would only see the up in this tournament at the end of the season. But as it is, with these quick turnarounds sometimes, and as people have pointed out with stats before, these Hoosiers struggle after big games and quick turnarounds to present in a good way, and that's what hit us on this time. So thank you for joining us, guys. Thank you for joining us on possibly the last edition of this for the season of Hoosier Morning After. I'm your host, Chad Schwartzkopf. Thank you for being here with me. With me, as always, as it has been this year, and let me first take this point to kind of say this is a huge thank you to Martha for being there with me this season, for joining the podcast and being with me on the regular. It's been a lot easier to have someone like Martha to bounce things off of, to talk things through and figure things out, rather than me just rambling to you guys on there. So it's been a delight, and I look forward to as many seasons as we can pumping through this show. And thank you to you guys for being here, watching this show, and being a part of it. Like I've said many times before on this, I don't make a single dime on this, guys. I do this just out of fun and love for Hoosier Nation. And so it's great to be here for you guys, talking about it and talking out things and dealing with it, as it is tough to sometimes. And this is definitely one of those tough ones. Martha, again, thank you for being with me. Give me kind of your thoughts on IU in the tournament, this game. Where's your headspace right now?
Yeah, and thank you for the kind words. It's been I've enjoyed this. To your point, I wish it's something that we could go a couple more weeks. So certainly bittersweet in that aspect, but I've had a lot of fun. If this show's taught me anything, it's taught me to let some things breathe, sleep on some things. Instant reaction isn't always 100% needed, but yeah, it's certainly been a fun ride. And you certainly wake up this morning pretty bittersweet, right? I think we talk about sitting here, in October, November, discussing the beginning of the season and the hope that they kind of surrounded what we were about to get into in terms of our roster, our lineup, what we thought may happen, where we were ranked preseason, and obviously certainly some adversity throughout the season. And I love the way the program bounced back, when we lost X, but it was kind of a roller coaster ride, and you mentioned it, right? There was really an inability to put together. We had that stretch when we kind of figured things out, but then towards the end of the year, it really became difficult for this team to put back-to-back good performances together, especially on short rest. And I think when you prepared for the tournament, that was big concern. You thought maybe, okay, we're playing for our lives here, they'd be able to put that away. But, Miami's a team with experience on the perimeter, and Indiana's really struggled against teams like that. And I think I was kind of hanging my hat on the aspect that, okay, we've got some size down low. We'll be able to work it through Trace, control things on that end, control the rebounds, which we certainly didn't do. And I think that's where my biggest frustration lies. And Coach mentioned it. Miami was just better last night. And reminded of the clip that kind of went viral of the K-State coach yesterday saying we're a team full of dogs. And there's some truth to that. There really is. I mean, when you're talking about rebounding, especially with Indiana's size difference over Miami, I think that's the most frustrating part is that's just a want, right? That's just getting outworked. And I think that's the frustrating part to me. I mean, yeah, Jalen was asked to carry a heavy load. Did he have a good game last night? Far from it, right? He struggled shooting the ball, which he sometimes does. But it's not like we had a whole lot of other answers on the perimeter. And you could argue we should have worked the ball through Trace more, and there's probably some truth to that. But we got down and down quick, and I think Jalen felt pressure to be that guy and felt like he needed to be that guy, and he didn't have it last night. So just disappointing. I think some trends kind of set in, and they certainly reared their ugly head last night. And I wake up this morning bittersweet because we're losing some really good guys on the program, right? Trace is a legend, and we're not going to get to watch him anymore. Race has been here since Coach would say a decade, right? So it's just we're saying bye to some really, really good guys. And I think it's just sad, right? And you combine that with the unknown, it's like, where do we go from here? So, typical end of the year stuff, but just disappointed this morning.
It was definitely tough to come to that realization, and I definitely did at some point in the second half. Maybe I was just maybe a coping mechanism from myself, or what you want to call it, but I did reach a point in that second half where I go, oh, holy cow, this is going to be the last time I see Trace in a jersey now. I think I in my subconscious saw this team going so much further and everything, and it became very bittersweet at the end there as they tried to claw back. And talking about individual performances and stuff, you talked about Jalen Hood-Schifino there, and I agree. I think he was feeling the pressure of this time. Again, he's always stoic, and you don't see emotion from him, but the pressure was getting to him. But yet then at the end, you see him knock down 3 threes on a little screening action, and you're like, where's that the whole game? But there were times in this game, again, and we've said this before, and I think it's maybe something that we only say when it struggles and it doesn't go in, but I felt like him and a couple other guards, we definitely rushed into some early shots, trying to take some things before we tried to work it around. The Miami defense is not known statistically as a very high defense or quality defense. Not to say they're not bad, but we didn't test to that. We didn't force the issue. We didn't make that one extra pass that it felt like it needed in this. We did get some open looks, and we did hit some of those down, but I think there were some struggles of finding the proper offense and what to do with it. We did have some good ball screen action with Trace towards the end, and that was kind of when things were hitting, and we were doing good things in the beginning of the second half, but I think the team kind of felt like we got away from that then, and we started to take those early shots. Tamar's early random three on transition comes to mind and everything when I think about those. But overall, just looking at this team and trying to break down, obviously the biggest point is those rebounds. That's where the difficulty came. And Coach kind of owned up to a lot of that, even on his end. I think the coaching struggled as well. I do want to shift a little bit and at least talk about the guys that are leaving us. You said some brief things about them there, and the first one I want to speak on is Miller Kopp. Miller Kopp obviously came in to us from Northwestern and got a lot of grief this year. He got a lot of complaints, and he shouldered that. And I'm thankful for the effort that he gave, because I did see a lot of effort from him this season. His shot making ability was there. My only complaint with him and his shot making was that I wanted a little more Tamar in him. I wanted a little more fearlessness of taking those shots. But I'm thankful for him coming in and doing what he did, and giving the effort that he did for this program, improving on his defense like he did. This game, obviously, it showed his struggles that he has on the defensive side, and it's just not in his game to deal with a team that can get downhill, that is fast on the dribble. But Miller was a fun player to have on the team. A lot of people call it distractions or what you will with the stuff you see behind the scenes with them with videos and stuff. But that's fun. That's what makes the sport fun for this team. And that's what makes it fun for the fans to get these glimpses in and seeing these players with some personality and some fun. So thank you, Miller, for being a Hoosier, and you always will be, and for doing what you did for this team. What are your thoughts as we say goodbye to Miller?
Yeah, I really gonna miss that guy as well. I thought he gave us, kind of insight to the program that we, typically don't get, that back end stuff that we don't get to see, and the fun he brought to the team. It's a guy that just, from from my seat, really seems like a guy that loves life, that loved being a part of the Indiana program, that really bought into everything that the program's about. And when you think about his skill set, it's not like he was part of an offense that really spoke to that, right? A lot of times in this offense, with the way we run it, he's sitting in the corner waiting for the ball maybe to get kicked out to him. It's not like we're running a lot of sets for Miller Kopp. And so, and I think he took advantage of what did come to him. There were times when he was cold, right? But you remember some of those games early in the year, he wasn't missing from three. And I think his defense took a significant step as well. There for the second half, for a while last night, he was guarding Miami. He was asked to guard Miami's best player because we didn't have an answer. And so I really think he stepped it up from a defensive standpoint as well. But yeah, I think he's a guy that just bought in, right? Didn't start his career here, but I'm glad he finished it here, and I'll really, really miss him.
Next player that finished his 10th season at IU, Race Thompson, just the amazing glue guy. A guy, as we've kind of said before and we've talked about, just has dealt with the emotional roller coaster playing for IU. Injuries that he's had, the concussion that he dealt with, the very scary moment that we shared with him this year as he dropped to the floor holding his knee, tears in his eyes and tears out of IU fans, is this the way that we say goodbye to Race Thompson? But thank goodness it wasn't anything too major, and he was able to fight his way back and get back on the court, and he struggled for a little bit. But I'm very thankful that he did find his game again, and that while he may have struggled a little bit in this game, he had the Kent State game. I'm so happy that he had a game like that to be fresh in our minds towards the end of the season. And we got to see that glue guy, that guy that was there as a great complement to Trace Jackson Davis, a great guider, a great mentor, a tough guy, the bruiser kind of our team, would get into the face. I even remember earlier on, maybe it was last year sometime, when one of the guards got knocked down on a hard foul, and Race immediately comes in and just stares down the other guy, just going like, I dare you to touch my player like that again. It's such a great guy, such an emotional guy, and just so thankful for him to stick with the IU team. He could have gone somewhere else. He could have headed back home this past year, but he was excited and fine with staying here and saw a good path and situation. Now, who knows what the future holds for him, and I wish him the best, but just so grateful that we got to see the Race Thompson that we know at the end of the season. What's your thoughts on Race?
I think when you talk about legacies and what players mean, I think we can all pick and choose what it means to us individually. I'll choose to remember Race as somebody that was a warrior, was a glue guy, was a guy that he stuck around when he didn't have to, right? I mean, he was one of Archie's first recruits, if not his first recruit, and he's a guy who stuck through everything, bought into what Coach Woodson was selling, returned for a second year under Coach Woodson, and a guy that just, to your point, missed a lot of time due to injuries. And I think he struggled some this year, especially coming back from the injury. He was pretty inconsistent. I mean, you talk about for every Kent State game, there was you look at the end of the game against, I think it was Maryland in the Big Ten tournament. Just there was a lot of decisions he made towards the end of the season. Like, what is he doing, man? You're a 6-year senior. So I thought he was inconsistent. But I think anytime you lose a guy like X and you've got a bench that produces virtually nothing, the microscope's on everybody. And I think everybody felt that pressure, including Race. And he's a guy that's out there, for every three that Race made, he probably missed three or four. So it's just one of those things where I'll remember him for what he was. And that to me, that's a warrior. That's a guy that just gave everything and left it all out on the court. I think that, he's a guy that his body's just been beat down, and you can start to see that at the end. He's battling back from a knee injury, and he's, we're wanting him to contribute. We're wanting him to be the old Race. That's a big ask when you're asked to come back from knee injury like that. And so, but he did. He left everything on the court, and that's certainly how I'll choose to remember him.
Yep. Next guy before we get to the big guy, guy that's obviously likely gone. It would take something pretty ridiculous to see him back in an Indiana uniform next year. Jalen Hood-Schifino comes into this IU program, obviously a highly touted point guard, a point guard of immeasurable size that you don't see very often, 6'6", and has quite the season. What a tough season to have to come in and do. We were very excited to see that he would come in and he'd have the tutelage and the mentor of Xavier Johnson, someone to go against in practice and everything. And how are those two going to play with each other? How exciting that situation could be. And while he did also deal with a little bit of, I think it was foot or something with him, but he did deal with a little bit of an injury in the early part of the season, which kind of, I think we could have gotten closer in a few other games throughout the season, but had to deal with quite the adversity. I mean, had to grow up quick. And you can talk a lot of what ifs with Xavier Johnson of if he was back and if he was still playing. You can also say a lot of what ifs with Jalen Hood-Schifino, is that if Xavier Johnson didn't get injured, would he have been able to develop like he did? Because this was a person as a freshman that was put into the frying pan with having his number called as being the leader of this team at the point. We all know exactly how tough it is to play point for an Indiana Woodson team, that he puts a lot of pressure on the point guard to lead this team. And Jalen stepped up. He was an unflappable point guard. He was one that even when things were down, you didn't see any emotion come out of him. Very stoic in that sense. Sometimes you don't like that out of players and everything, but as a point guard, to keep things calm on his end and do what he can. We held him to a high level and a high standard, and that was a tough thing for him to live up to. And to look back and have games like the Purdue game where he would just caught fire was great to see. And then a bummer to have games like he did last night where he struggled. But so thankful to have him on this team, opening the door, as you always kind of say in these kind of instances, when you get these high-level five-star players, to be able to give Woodson the ammo to say, look, you can come in as a high-rated freshman, as a point guard in this system, and look at what you can produce for this team. So grateful to have him. So excited to see his name called in the first round of the NBA draft, as it will be. Your thoughts on Jalen?
My instant response, I think there's two ways to look at this, and I struggle being overly critical when a guy has probably just wrapped up his career, but I thought he was pretty bad last night, to a point where he was almost a liability early on, right? He got pulled defensively. When you're facing a team like Miami, it's so important that you start off the game well, and I thought that just defensively, his head wasn't there yesterday to start the game, and then as the game went on, you look at the box score and you see a guy like Jalen Hood-Schifino taking 22 shots and Trace Jackson-Davis taking 10 shots. And it's just like, how do we get to that point, right? And so I struggle in the moment with that, right? I think, leading until we got to the end of the game, he was 0 for 11 from 3. And to me, that's just forcing it when it's not there. But I can't use that one game as frustrating as it is to, label Jalen Hood-Schifino's career at Indiana. I mean, to your point, we don't win that Purdue game without him. And I remember the reverse layup that he had against Rutgers at home, where, you had that picture, that still shot of Trace and Race just with their mouths wide open. So there are those plays like that you're just like, man, this guy is a future pro. And again, it's a lot. It's a massive ask for a freshman to carry the load on the perimeter for a team, especially losing X. Right? It's just as good as he was. Freshmen are still inconsistent, and I thought all that said, right? Jalen gave us everything he had. I mean, you could tell by his reaction last night. Dude couldn't even talk to the press. Everything I read, he's extremely emotional, and so it's tough, right? It's a short-lived career. I think we had some really, really special moments from him. Would have loved to see it end better because I thought last night was a real struggle for him. But I look forward to watching him in the NBA. I think he'll have a strong NBA career as he continues to develop. So always appreciate him for buying into what Coach Woodson was saying. I think the biggest thing that Jalen gave us was a blueprint for success for future recruiting, right? You can go out and you could show recruits what Jalen was able to do in this offense. And, we improve in the perimeter because Coach mentioned it last night, and I'm rambling a little bit, but I'll end it with this: is he's never had to run through a big guy. He's never had to run his offense through a big guy. We didn't have enough on the perimeter to kind of showcase, I think, what Coach Woodson is all about. And now he can go out and say, hey, look, I took a freshman point guard, and he had this type of season. He's now in the NBA. You can go out and use that to recruit perimeter players. And I think that's the biggest thing that Jalen gave us. So, very, very thankful for him. I look forward to watching him as he continues his professional career.
Yep. And now the tough one to talk about. There's not enough. There could be almost a complete show to talk about this man and what he's done for this program, how he's was able to ease the transition of a new coach coming in, because that's never easy. It gets easier when you have retention on your team, when you have star players deciding, yes, I'm coming back. That sets the ball rolling that other players want to come back and gives ammo for that coach to say, look, I got this guy here. This All-American is staying. It's going to play for me. Come be a part of it too. And he's been able to do that for this team. And we've seen him grow so much. Obviously, we're talking about Trace Jackson Davis. He finishes on the charts for Indiana, first in rebounds with 1,143, first in blocks, 270, and third in points with just a little bit over 2,200. What a roller coaster we've had with him. I was so excited on the day that we got him with Archie Miller and what this program could be. And he was his hands were tied, obviously, with Archie, as we saw. Once he decided he's coming back with Woodson to play, we saw a little glimpse last year as to what he can be. And then, wow, what a leap he took from his junior to his senior year. Just becoming that standard good center player and adding in the assists that he did was just amazing this past year. That was the biggest thing in his game and his tool chest of abilities. The assist that we saw out of him this year was amazing. Just such they don't say it, they say it so often, and you can't say it enough, but a once-in-a-generation type of player. And hopefully we can be saying it a lot more about players that are to come. Maybe not, we won't ever really see necessarily a senior like this again, because the game, as we will talk about in a little bit, is headed away from that. But we may be talking about players that have an impact like he does, and you hope to see that kind of situation happen. And like we just said with Jalen Hood-Schifino, just such a tape giver for Mike Woodson. Look at what you can do in this program. If you're a big guy and you want to come, look at what I can do. Look at what I can do with a big guy. Look at how diverse I can make you, and what you can come out being. More of an NBA player than just a tall guy underneath that you throw the ball to go up. So thankful for what he did, and it hurt so much to see him go out at the end of the game with tears in his eyes, because he didn't want it to go out like that. And I thank him so much for committing to the Hoosiers and for being that model Hoosier and showing that he truly cared. And I do believe 100% when he says that he wanted this for this program and he wanted IU to be better and get better. So thank you to Trayce Jackson-Davis for what you've done. Your thoughts, as hard as it is to try to sum up in a little bit on a show, Martha, about Trayce Jackson-Davis.
Yeah, not a lot left to be said about his legacy. I mean, he's a legend. I'm disappointed that, when you look at the duration of his career, that obviously a lot of individual, awards and records and things of that nature. I wish from a team aspect that, we got the first 4 win last year and a tournament win this year, but I just wish there could have been a little bit more, right? The second weekend performance in the NCAA tournament, a Big Ten championship, a tournament championship, something like that. I think that I don't think by any means that tarnishes any sort of legacy whatsoever. I think as time passes on, our appreciation will grow for what Trayce is and what he means to this program. I think, when we look back, what third all-time scoring, first in blocks, first in rebound. I can't remember what the other one was, but I mean, just a guy that when you look at some of the stats and some of the records that he broke, and not being a perimeter player, I mean, it's just an absolute legend. And I think that in the moment, when you look at kind of the where the program's been through these last 4 or 5 years that he's been here, and some of the struggles, I think that sometimes in the moment we don't appreciate him as much. But I think as time passes on, we'll look back and realize what an absolute legend that Trayce Jackson-Davis is and was, and just for him to stick through it all, right? He had opportunities to leave multiple times and never did. He wanted, to your point, he wanted Indiana to be good. And he mentioned it last night. He's like, I hope people remember me for leaving this place better than I found it, helping this place get better. And, there's no doubt in anybody's mind, I think, that that's absolutely 100% the case. He left Indiana basketball better than he found it. And, wish we could have surrounded him with more pieces. Wish the bench would have stepped up a little bit more for him this year. Wish X would have been healthy for him this year. There's a lot of what ifs, but at the end of the day, it doesn't tarnish anything about him. And that's just remember him for the legend that he is.
Yep. And as we shift now into the off season and going to be a very eventful off season, and as you always kind of get into these situations, you start to wonder, what's this team going to be? What's this roster going to be, especially with the way the transfer portal is and everything in the country this year. It's easy to be said that our possibly our second, maybe our best scorer may be still yet to be on this roster. It's obviously wake up, as Coach Woodson said last night. They asked him about not looking too far ahead, when he's going to get into the transfer portal, when they're going to start talking. And I think it obviously starts right away. I think easily Kenya Hunter and Coach Ya woke up this morning and started to work those phones, fired up their computers and started to look at guys. Howard as well, who's been invaluable in recruiting for IU. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what the moves are and what happens on this. And like we said, the coaching staff has some good tape ammo to show guys and the situations. And I think, as we've seen, and this is nothing against the guys that we have on, but there has to be some major development from the guys that are currently on this roster. And who knows if guys leave? We can sit and play the hypotheticals all we want about this person might transfer out, this person might stay and everything. Who knows what we're going to do? And we can run ourselves into circles trying to speak of that. But what this team does need to secure is some more constant and reliable and more athletic guard play. As we kind of saw what happened against a team that we would hope and the type of players that we could see Woodson do some good stuff with that Miami had last night. Some long, athletic guard situations would really help this team and would really be able to move things going forward. I can't give you specifics on players that IU should be going for. There's already some high-level ones that IU's talking to in the portal. But that's, I think, the first spot that IU needs to go. I know it's quick to want to jump to conclusions and say that IU needs to find a Trayce Jackson-Davis replacement. I'm one that's less inclined to say that. I think we kind of saw a little bit, and you'll see as you watch the tournament that it's more of a guards game, especially as you get into the tournament. And Woodson himself has said he's more used to dealing and working with guards. So that may be the way the Wade team is moving forward. Martha, kind of your thoughts as we head into this offseason and what Indiana might be looking for and what we need to do with this offseason.
I guess I'll say buckle up. I think when if there's any point where I feel we should be critical, it's you look at development, right? I think the makeup of this roster, especially when both Trace and Race decided to come back, and we talked about it early in the year. It's like, hypothetically, is it would it have been better for us to have a big move on where we didn't start two bigs, right? So we could start to develop what we thought Woody's offense would be in the NBA oriented offense, perimeter based. And when we talked early in the year about what this roster could be and what this team could do, a lot of it hinged on the development of guys like Tamar Bates and Jordan Geronimo. And that was a huge bust this year. There's no way around it. Tamar took a step back. Jordan took a step back. And quite honestly, the brutal truth is those are two guys that you can't build this program around. You just can't. It's just Tamar was 0 for 7 last night. I don't even know if Jordan played. So as you start to talk about this roster, there's so many unknowns, right? I mean, we've got to build this now through guys we're bringing in, but also the transfer portal, and then you start talking about NIL and all that stuff. So there's so many unknowns right now that we're not. I think the one positive is everything you've heard about where we sit from an NIL standpoint is that we should be able to be very aggressive in the transfer portal. So I think that's exciting, but the unknowns are pretty significant right now because we're not sure where we're going. And the one thing that's kind of a struggle is we don't really have guys returning outside of a couple that you can really build this team on. The building blocks aren't as many as we thought they'd be, I guess I'll say, right? I think we thought we'd have a few more pieces as a part of the puzzle moving forward. So, yeah, I'm disappointed The bench scored 0 points last night. You can't win that way. You've got to build some depth. You've got to build some better development. And I think that's where we need to take a step forward. I don't know. And at the same time, you look at how they were utilized as well. You've got to ask that question too. I mean, Caleb Banks came in and made an instant impact on the boards, and I don't know that we saw him in the second half. It's things like that, right? It really wasn't conducive to giving a platform for those guys to be successful because it was so inconsistent on when they saw the court. So there's all those questions, right? We know Woody's very reliant on his veterans, the guys that got him there. So there's part of that as well, but I think he lost trust pretty quickly in his bench or lack thereof. So that's an area where we've got to figure things out. We've got to build some depth. We can't expect to be successful when you're getting as little as we got from our bench. But again, I guess I'll hang my hat on knowing that the staff has some blueprints to go out and show, both recruits at the high school level and, potential transfers. The NIL seems to be in a good spot. So, it should be a lucrative spot for players to land. There's tons of opportunities. So hopeful there that we can go out and get some talent that speaks to Coach Woodson's style of offense, and we can set ourselves up to be successful.
Yep. And I the added thing that I'm excited for, and hopefully the offseason can be very productive for him is, and I think he should be able to get it. I think we crest the amount of games needed, but having Xavier Johnson back next year at least puts a little bit of ease that of losing 4 starters out of this team. It would have been 5 had Xavier Johnson been playing. He would have graduated, and it would have been all 5 starters leaving this Indiana team this year. So there could be a step back next year. There could be a step forward. There's a lot of question marks to still be answered. And like Martha said at the beginning, buckle up, because it's gonna be crazy, and it's not going to be instant. There's going to be a lull now, guys. It's going to be tough because we're going to have to sit tight because It's going to be a while till we see moves and situations happen, and it's going to be exciting when things do get announced, because we're going to be digging into who is this player, what did he do at his old place, how could he fit in, and as we start to build this roster, and it's fun. And then we will get into the hypotheticals of how this team can play together and how guys can improve, and it is fun in the offseason to do that and everything, but it is always something that has to be done with a measured sense of hesitancy, because we can just kind of look at what we thought out of the preseason for this year. We set the bar pretty high, and this team struggled to reach that bar. We touched it many times, but too many times we fell underneath that bar this year. But overall, as I sit back and in the limited time now that I am separated from this season, I'm very thankful for it, and I'm very happy to have gone through it. The roller coaster that it is, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad. It's been a season, and it's delivered some great moments for us. Sweeping Purdue, winning our first round, getting into that second round in the tournament. They're all step forwards. Again, maybe the bar was too high, that we expected the move forward to be better, and it could have been, and maybe it should have been. But I'm thankful for where we were and where we landed. That being said, and putting all that behind us, one thing that we still have to be thankful for and excited for is the women's team. And while you won't get another show from us here, and we don't claim to be a IU women's basketball show, I will say that we have to talk about them at least and say how excited I am for them. They play tonight against Miami at 8 o'clock. Everything looking wise, it looks like Holmes will play tonight. We've seen some video of her practicing and everything. She may be limited, but excited for this team to go in. Let's get some revenge. Let's bury the women's team for the men's team. Let's take care of business. Your thoughts on the women's team and at least some Indiana basketball still to be played?
I'm really hopeful that we get to see Mackenzie Holmes a little bit tonight. By all accounts, it sounds like the coach's press conference yesterday, she stated that she practiced yesterday, wanted to practice even a little bit more, but she's ready to go and play some minutes today. I love their path, provided she's able to contribute. But she's a foundational piece for that program. So really need to get a healthy Mac, and maybe that's part of the plan, right? She sat out the other night, and we were able to win by 30, right? And to get that knee right, because we're going to need her. The games are only going to get tougher from this point on. So hopefully we can see her a little bit contribute, because Miami it's not going to be. I mean, you saw Stanford get beat last night, a 1 seed. You saw Iowa almost go down yesterday. So these second round games are, they're not a cakewalk. If you remember last year, Indiana was taken to the wire by Princeton to make it to the Sweet 16. So these games are no breeze, no walk in the park. I'm glad it's at home, and I'm hoping we see Mac. But you get through this game and make it to the Sweet 16, and we see Mac. There's no doubt in my mind this team has the talent to win a national championship. So looking forward to seeing how they come out tonight for sure.
Yep, very, very exciting to watch this team. So much fight, so much depth, so much just excitement. Great to see, like you said, what they could do without Mac, but so exciting to get her back and what they can do moving forward. So so that's going to do it. Martha, let me give you one last chance just to kind of say some final words on the closing of this men's season, the 2022-2023 season.
Sure, yeah, and then thank you again for allowing me to be part of the Hoosier Morning After journey. It's been a lot of fun. I look forward to continuing to do it. I think I'll look back on this season, equal parts appreciation and equal parts what could have been / disappointment. I think that when you look at the way this team was, picked to win the Big Ten and picked to do some special things, you've got to be disappointed about kind of how we didn't make it to the second weekend, and we weren't there at the end of the Big Ten race. But as time went on, I think you can't overstate how big of a loss Xavier Johnson's injury was. I mean, games like not last night are a perfect example. We didn't have the perimeter depth. Trey Galloway was, you saw how special he was coming off the bench. He's forced into a starting role. It just shifted the entire dynamic of the team. And you've got to have some major appreciation how they were able to. I mean, you saw the instant result of losing X was we dropped 3 games in a row, but they found it, right? They figured it out and they fought. And you've got to appreciate how the coaching staff was able to get this team to play competitive basketball while losing X. But at the end, it was just not enough. You combine losing X with 0 bench support, and we just didn't have the horses to get things done. We couldn't put back-to-back strong performances together. So it's just tough. It makes you think about what could have been had we had X. I think that this team would have been there in the Big Ten race. At the end, we'd still be playing. We would have been set up much better against a team like Miami. So that's the hard part, right? I mean, you're never prepared for injuries, and I'll just think back on with what could have been, and certainly still with the appreciation for Trace and everything that those guys gave, but just very, very bittersweet end of the season.
Yep. What an emotional season it's been. What an up and down. What a Jekyll and Hyde. What a consistent and inconsistent and just everything in between season this has been. But thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for tuning in with us. Thank you for being a part of our little experiment of taking the night to relax and rethink and clear your head on the games and be able to kind of look at this team possibly with a little less initial emotion and reaction. It's been great having you here with us, and that is going to do it for this edition of the Hoosier Morning After and this season of Hoosier Morning After. We'll be back with you to do a postseason preview once everything lines out and gets settled going forward. Again, can't say thank you enough to Martha for joining me this season and everything. It's been great having you. It's been great talking things out with you as we've gone out through this season. Thanks as always to you as the viewer for watching. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you here that are live with me, joining in the chat as it's getting more active as we've been going on in this season. Those tuning in on Twitter, Facebook, and on the podcast platforms, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to Bob Thompson for producing the music you hear, this great theme song. I'm very appreciated to him. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Until then, as always, go out there, have a wonderful day. And as always, let's go Hoosiers.